final plan. That's a standard comment, and I'm sure that's a will comply. The third comment is about the requirement to offer Perkiomen Avenue ultimate right-of-way for dedication. The applicant has requested a waiver of that requirement. And I believe that was discussed with the board, with the commissioners at a previous meeting. The next is the requirement to widen Perkiomen Avenue. It's a local residential street, and by your subdivision ordinance, it is to be widened to provide a 24-foot cartway, or 12 feet from center line, and a 50-foot right-of-way, which would be 25 feet from center line. The applicant has requested a waiver of the requirement to do road improvements to Perkiomen Avenue. The next comment, number 5, talks about an access strip being a minimum of 50 feet wide for its entire length. This is for those rear lots or flag lots. The applicant's requested a waiver of this requirement where it appears in your subdivision and land development ordinance. You may recall they already received a variance from the zoning hearing board for a very similar requirement in our zoning ordinance. Next is about the shared access drive. There's a driveway that is shared by the 2 rear lots, and the code would call for that to be constructed over its full length to a minimum width of 18 feet. If you look at the plan today, it proposes 18 feet width for the first 50 feet, but not for the entire shared portion of the driveway. The applicant is requesting a waiver of that requirement. So that it will have some wide driveway, but it won't be 18 feet wide the whole way back. Next is sidewalks are required to be installed along Perkiomen Avenue per your code. The applicant has requested a waiver of this requirement. I will note that I don't recall any sidewalks above or below this property along Perkiomen Avenue. Comment number 8 talks about conservation of existing vegetation, and the proposed grading work will encroach within the drip line of existing trees that are to be preserved. And it was recommended that a certified arborist be consulted regarding protection and preservation of the trees on and near the site during construction. The next comment just references the financial guarantee required for subdivisions. The applicant's engineer did submit a cost estimate, and I'll provide a review of that under a separate report. Comment number 10 talks about pavement thickness and composition for the shared driveway. We asked that it be beefed up a little bit. Your code actually would call for it to be the engineering standards of the code would actually call for something like that to be done to road standards, but I think I've talked to the applicant's engineer about an alternative design that's sort of in between the residential driveway and the full road standards. And the applicant's engineer seemed amenable to that if the applicant was as well. So I added some additional comments. One was to ask for a deed restriction or plan note consistent with the requirements of the zoning hearing board decision that was dated June 25th, 2018. I requested a construction entrance added to the shared driveway at the intersection of Perkiomen Avenue and an adjustment to the limit of disturbance. I spoke with the applicant's engineer. He was agreeable to adjusting the limit of disturbance. We talked about the challenges of the construction entrance and that there's some existing vehicles using that. And he was going to instead put a very clear and obvious note that no mud shall be tracked onto Perkiomen Avenue. And I think that would be acceptable. There's still a construction entrance provided for each of the proposed lots being constructed. And then the note 13, I just requested some notes to clarify plan intent, and the applicant's engineer was in agreement with those notes. The Montgomery County Planning Commission did review this plan previously and offered comment. The Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection has very recently approved the sewage facilities planning for this project, and I believe we did have a will-serve letter from the Schweitzville Borough Authority. So I guess what's left at this point is for the Planning Commission to consider the waiver requests and for the applicant to confirm if he is in agreement with the other than the waiver requests.
So just to summarize, the applicant's requesting a waiver for items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's it? Did I miss one?
That's it. No, keep going.
And so I'm gonna, does anybody have any discussion, anything that they want to talk about? I know this was reviewed extensively in August and I was not here. So I don't know, I'm assuming that whatever is in this letter is pretty much what was talked about in August. I don't know at that time whether there was a vote taken about supporting the waiver requests. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think we supported the waiver request.
Yeah, I believe both Ernie and I did, but they had to go before the zoning hearing
Yes,
board
they've been
and
there
get
twice.
that approval before the waivers can be granted.
I believe the applicant was advised that the planning commission was generally in favor of the waivers, but no formal vote was taken this month.
Yeah.
I would put into a motion that we forward this to the supervisors with our approval of the variances, and also with the additional comments that are here also, that they be prefaced with the deed restrictions, the additional construction entrance, and the other items that have to be put onto the plan. Is that satisfactory?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're basically saying we want to recommend the
Yes.
plan to the supervisors and support the waivers of items 3, 4, 5,
Right.
6, and 7.
Right here.
And the applicant, you're okay with all of the other things in here?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any concerns, questions? Go ready to vote. Sorry? Huh?
We do a comment before.
You mean public comment?
Yeah.
Does anybody from the public have anything they want to say?
Can I have a second on the motion?
I'll make a second. I was just holding back until we're in August to know, what you guys want to know. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That's everybody. Congratulations. I'm
Thank you
sorry
very
it took a little longer than
Good luck.
Mother Nature kind of
What about like?
was trying. Although I think we made the right call on Thursday.
Yeah.
To show up based on that. Anybody knows Rod that knows it's not a good situation for a whole day over there. Many vehicles. Okay. The next item up is Sambrick, subdivision on Alexander Drive. How do you want to approach that? Do you want to, Mr. Sambrick, do you want to present the plan to us, or Carol, what's more efficient, or to have Carol go over her review letter, or I'm easy either way? Yeah, okay.
Did you bring a board? We have keys over here.
What's that?
We all have copies, so they just, the audience can ask you that.
Do it for the public. Okay.
We should just have her identify.
Sure. Just for the record, can you identify yourself? So,
I did. My name is Estelle Everhart. I Everhart Mentis. I'm the civil engineer at the Fair
Take a picture and then I'm
For the
gonna look.
main groups,
Okay.
Sanford, the applicant.
great, thank you.
Sure.
Just leave it like that.
So this plan actually originated in 2013. Does that sound right?
Yes.
It's been before the zoning hearing board in previous years. And a revised plan was submitted in the middle of October under the title Block of Hierarchy for Art and Mentis. And that's the plan that was reviewed in my letter that's dated November 9th of 2018. Going through the comments, comment 1 is really a drafting note about signatures on the plan. applicant's obligation to construct, install, and guarantee improvements. Comment 3 is about sidewalks, curbs, and storm sewers along Alexander Drive. Township Code talks about installation of sidewalks, curbs, and storm sewers. If you're familiar with Alexander Drive, it's a cul-de-sac with relatively large lots back there. There's no curb, there's no sidewalk, there's just roadside swales. There's a little bit of stormwater in terms of inlets at the very bottom of the road of the cul-de-sac. So the applicant is requesting a waiver of the requirement to install curbs, sidewalks, and storm sewers along Alexander Drive. The next comment comes from your code again. Street trees are required to be planted along Alexander Drive at a ratio of 1 tree for every 50 linear feet of frontage, unless existing vegetation is determined to be sufficient and is to be preserved. And the applicant's requesting a waiver of the requirement. This is a generally wooded lot. There will be some trees removed to provide site distance and to construct any improvements on that property, but street trees might be something that the commission wants to consider offering a waiver for that wooded lot. The next item is private wells. Where no public water supply is available, the applicant must certify the adequacy of the private wells that will serve each lot. The applicant requested a waiver of that requirement. And then the next comment under subdivision and land development, is the last under that list, is the applicant's advised that posting of financial security for development improvements may be required as a condition of final plan approval. It's informational to the applicant. So the next comments all go into stormwater management, which is quite a challenge on this wooded lot. So there's numerous comments on stormwater management. The first one is simple. It's to add a signature block for the design of the post-construction stormwater management plan. The next is just a statement that I'm required to make as the township engineer, that as submitted, there are still some inconsistencies. It's not yet consistent with the requirements of the Act 167 watershed plan for the Swamp Creek watershed. And the further comments start to explain why. So comment number 9 specifies that per code the water quality volume must be contained for at least 24 hours. And the plan does not yet address that. I would presume the designer is going to continue to work on addressing that requirement.
She is.
Okay. In a similar vein, the release rate for a 2-year SCS score, which is a calculation methodology, soil conservation service calculation methodology. The design release rate for a 2-year storm after development must not exceed the release rate for a 1-year storm before development. And the 1-year storm must be released over a minimum of 24 hours. So that still needs to be accomplished with this plan, with this design. Item 11 just cites an issue in the plan calculations or the design calculations that we request the designer to address. Item 12 talks about the need for an operations and maintenance agreement. That's the case with all these projects today. We need to know and have an agreement that gets executed in accordance with the plan. Item 13 talks about easements, and again, with all these projects, you need an easement to permit access for inspection of the proposed stormwater management facilities, and I assume that would be provided by blanket easement or by providing us a specific easement. So there are some stormwater challenges with this plan, but that brings us to the end of the letter. The applicant may be required to submit evidence of approvals, acceptance or exemptions from agencies, including the County Planning Commission and the Department of Environmental Protection. We do have correspondence from both. The planning modules for this project actually are approved and have been for a little bit of time. So that's the conclusion of the review of the Sambrick subdivision.
So just for informational, we're in the overall grand scheme of things, where do we stand this focuses primarily on stormwater, or a good portion of it does. Are there other aspects of it that need to be looked at or reviewed?
Now, the planning commission has to give consideration to some of the waiver requests.
Right.
The sidewalk, curb, and storm sewer, from my familiarity with the positions this board has taken in the past, I don't imagine is a concern. I imagine that's something you're inclined to consider favorably. The street trees, again, given the history of this commission, I'm guessing that's something you'd be inclined to consider favorably based on the wooded lots back there. Number 5, the applicant must certify the adequacy of the private wells. In general, this commission has held that the applicants need to certify the adequacy of wells. Some of that goes back to the fact that within Lower Frederick Township, there are some areas with dye-based geology where finding well water can be a little questionable, especially in years that aren't as wet as this one. This project, I will note, is not over dye-based geology. So if the commission were inclined to consider that kind of a waiver, it would not be as challenging as over dye-based geology. However, in the past, this commission noted has not generally granted that waiver. I can only think of one exception, and it was an exceptionally large lot, just in the Frederick subdivision.
Excuse me, I would offer up that the intention is not necessarily to waive the need to have the certification done, but to defer to the building permit stage for these lots, because, as you know, there's a large and larger lots, and we're not quite sure where the buildings are going to end up being, so.
Would you be willing to drill the well before you acquired your building permit as a compromise? I've done that before as a building official here.
On submitting before it's approved, so we know we're going to build a house, we know where it's going to be, we know the location, and then we can drill the well at that point.
Yeah, I personally have no doubt with my experience in that geographic area that the water quality is substantial in that area.
Yeah, I know.
My only thing is a waiver is if you get through all your hurdles here, and when you come in for a building permit, that your well driller comes in before you and drills the well, and you know that you have the adequate supply at that time, and then you have your permit, it won't stymie you. Would that be a fair compromise?
So you're saying at time of permit application?
Right, once you get through all your other hurdles here.
Correct, so we get to the hurdles, we report the plan, we get to viable lots, and then the well drilling occurs,
And
once
then
it is applied.
I hand you an application, but before that's approved, I drill that well.
Right, you have your well drilled and you have your permit from the county.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
what is the history? There's an existing home on the property.
Yeah, so it's
And, you know, has there been any issues with that particular well, the flow rate or anything? So,
it's not, I forget how deep it is, but it's just your average well. It's not, we didn't have to go extra deep or anything for that well. There's no problem getting water volume with
And you reside in that your home.
it. Yeah.
is there any way, perhaps maybe when submitting, you know, for the final plans and everything, to just maybe get an engineer certification to say that there is an existing well on the property, you know, on one of the subdivisions, and just kind of indicate that there were no problems with it.
You actually, you probably wouldn't have been privy to this, but I believe you actually had a report or something from Joe Valentine, the soil scientist, indicating that in his belief, because this was not over dye-based soils, you would not have a problem with the well. Does that ring a bell? I think you actually had something from Joe Valentine.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's
When you said that, I think
That's exactly
that
what,
exists.
you know, I mean, because it's within the same area. So if there was something that was
Well, we've done
already
this
done.
before historically in the past. I guess the last subdivision was the Singer subdivision, where a large property was sold. And there were a number-
The old Whiting.
Right, the Whiting property. And then we had wells, in fact, my son had drilled a well, I guess it was number 3, had drilled a well on his property. And then we had other ones where we actually, because of the water quality being sufficient there, we didn't require every well
Every
to
single
drill.
one, yeah.
You know, we use common
So I
sense. It's the
just-
same issue out here in Alexander.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
We because, you know, you have
Yeah.
you have existing walls,
Water
there's.
quality's there, it's substantial, but as a requirement, rather than have a house built with no water, let them drill the well first, and then you get your permit.
Yeah, yes.
Just the back.
I
back.
agree.
I think that letter was actually from your office, Estelle. It was from your office with a waiver request. The waiver is requested because the site is not underlain by diabetes.
That's correct, it's not under the that's true.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't from Joe, and when I read
Yeah.
back,
So that's less of a concern than we're not a dialysis area, and it's indicated he doesn't have any currently with his well.
would you be willing to supply a letter from the soil scientist that says he doesn't anticipate a problem with wells?
Yes.
Supported that. And then a note on the plan required building permit for wells
Yes.
to drill?
But he has his well drilled, and has the permit from Montgomery County.
But in some off circumstance, there is a live well property that
Won't build, can't build.
Makes sense, right? It's gonna be in my interest too, at that point.
Anybody else have any?
Protects us.
Yeah, I understand. Anybody else have any thoughts? Suggestions? I think that's reasonable. You have whatever you have written down whatever you suggested.
Yeah. The well be drilled before the building permit will be approved.
Very simple. All right. Any of the other comments? I know, Terry, you had questions about the sidewalks and the trees.
Yeah, that was just an observation for this development. You kind of zoom out and look at the 10 acres here. You can see there was at one point, four other 10-acre lots. One of those is already subdivided, looks like twice. This one's another one. So more as a planning commission, thinking about the future, if we're to think or assume that at some point maybe these three other ones will also come to subdivide, would we think differently about sidewalks, the road that kind of continues through, although there's another property on their end of that road, the Simmons. So just bringing up the idea of thinking a little bit bigger than just what we have in front of us, nothing specific to these waivers, but to think about it that way, saying, would we guess that at some point we'll see more subdivisions in this neighborhood? So,
There's always that chance.
yeah.
Well, don't forget, there's two or three of those houses across the creek, so that's about impossible. That's all that. So you gotta get the line of the area before you build it.
And they're probably two or less.
Yeah.
That's 10 acres.
And
Oh, yeah, Marino did his thing when he wanted that property, he built something across the area. People do stuff. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but
Well, we had a very expensive bridge built up there in Alexandria, if you remember.